Hi and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing the mid-year freakout book tag. I was tagged in this by Tilly's Shelf, whose channel I will link in the description down below, so make sure you go check that out. So today I'm just going to be walking through some of my best and worst books that I've read this year so far. I can't believe we're halfway through the year already. Time's just moving so quickly. So let's get into it. So this is my mid-year freak out. So question one is best book that you've read of the year so far. I think for me I have three. As like anyone, it's kind of hard to narrow it down when there's so much out there. But I think definitely for me I have three, and that would be Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson, Engines of Empire by R.S. Ford, and The Book That Wouldn't Burn by Mark Lawrence. Three of these are vastly different, and all three are incredibly brilliant. So yeah, that would be my top books of the year so far. So question two is best sequel that you've read so far. I think for me it was The Bitter Twins and The Poison Song, which are the last two books in the Winnowing Flame series by Jen Williams. It was the series, I read the first book like back last year sometimes, and I had the last book in the series. I just couldn't find the sequel anywhere until I saw it on the Broken Binding website, and I was like, I had to have it, and it definitely lived up to my expectations. It was well written, the plot was really interesting, and the characters, like by the time you get to the end of them, you are fully rooting for them. And the ending nearly made me cry on a scale of like, I got a little bit teary-eyed, but not full on like bawling my eyes out so I couldn't see. So yeah, that would be my best sequel that I've read so far. Question three, new release you haven't read yet but want to. I kind of want to read Fourth Wing, only because I've seen so many good reviews about it, but also I've seen some other not so good reviews, and I just kind of want to find out for myself. The premise of it sounds really interesting, but from what I've heard from other people, it's kind of like, it's a bit like Marmite, you either like it or you don't like it. So yeah, so Fourth Wing would be one that new release that I would like to read, but I'm still kind of on the fence about it. Question four, most anticipated release for the second half of the year. I have a couple, but the one that I'm most excited for is The Art of Destiny by Wesley Chu. I read The Art of Prophecy on holiday this year, and I loved it. It was funny, the world building was incredible, and just the sort of the imagery that that Wesley Chu like creates was fantastic, and the fight scenes were phenomenal. Like, you could really tell that he was a stunt person, because that really comes into the fight scenes, and they're so in depth, and I love the fact that you get the characters' mindsets when they're in the fight scene, so that was really interesting. Question five is biggest disappointment. I think for me it was Her Majesty's Secret Coven. For this one, I really loved the thought of just this all-female sort of undercover witch society that keeps like Britain safe from all the bad things in the world. I think for me though, the ending kind of made me really annoyed. Why would you do that at the end of a novel if they're the main character? Why would you do that at the end of the novel? It really annoyed me and left me feeling a little bit frustrated. And again, I wish there was just a little bit more depth to it. I love the characters, and I thought the sort of the relationship between all the female protagonists was really, really interesting, and it is an interesting sort of take on the world at the moment, and so I thought it was really interesting, but for me it just kind of lacked a little bit of depth, which I usually like in my reading. So yeah, Her Majesty's Secret Coven would probably be my biggest disappointment. Question 6, my biggest surprise. I think my biggest surprise was Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater. I'm not usually one for cozy fantasy. Since I read Legends Lattes last year, I've been kind of getting a bit more into cozy fantasy, and I really liked Half a Soul. I didn't think it was one that I was going to like, because I'm not usually a massive fan of fae stories. Like, I've not really read like Game of Thrones or any of those massive like fae novels. I read the first like ACOTAR book, but then that's it. So this year I've been kind of getting a bit more into fae stories, and this was an interesting one to get into, and the premise of it was really, really interesting, but also it was such a sweet book to read. There was one scene in it where the two main characters are dancing in the ballroom, and the male protagonist in it creates this, like, they're dancing through stars, and I thought that imagery was just beautiful. It was fantastic. Question 7, favourite new author, debut or new to me. I think for me is Hannah Kaner or Wesley Chu, or even Mark Lawrence. I hadn't heard of Mark Lawrence before I'd read The Book That Wouldn't Burn, but Hannah Kaner is a debut this year, which was Godkiller, and Wesley Chu is obviously The Art of Prophecy, which also I think came out last year. But yeah, they would be two authors, both equally unique, but their writing styles are really good, and I love it when people can do sarcasm really well. It kind of speaks to my humour quite a lot. So those two are really, really good. Number 8, newest fictional crush. I don't know. I don't really get fictional crushes when it comes to sort of reading. But who knows? I might find some that I develop going through. I mean, saying that, when I was reading Engines of Empire, I did quite like Fulren. I thought he was an interesting character, and there was just elements of him that I kind of liked, but I wouldn't say I had a crush on him. So make of that as you will. Question number 9 is newest favourite character. I don't know, again, there's a lot to choose from. But one of them I would say is Tress from Tress and the Emerald Sea, and the other one would be Laveria from The Book That Wouldn't Burn. Both completely fantastic characters, but for various reasons. I just think they're fab. Like with Tress, I think what I loved about her was the fact that she was completely normal. Just completely normal. She had all her parents, she lived a happy life, she didn't want something more than what she already had, but she still went and faced down all these awful things and all these like big challenges just to save the person that she loved. And I thought that was really great, and it was a really different character than what I'd read before, so that was really interesting. And then Laveria, I think she's a spitfire. She's so tenacious, and she just goes after what she wants, and I always kind of like identify with those sorts of characters. And someone who's always an underdog always kind of worms its way into my heart, because I always like rooting for the underdogs. So those two would be some in amongst some of my favourite characters for this past 6 months. Question 10, book that made you cry. So at the beginning of the year, I read a book called The Winter Garden by Alexandra Bell. I did do a small review of this over on my Instagram page, but it was a stunning book. A lot of reviewers liken it to The Night Circus, which is one of my favourite books as well, but it's vastly different. The imagery is roughly the same as The Night Circus, but its sort of themes and its messages and things like that are vastly different from The Night Circus. The book is centered around two female protagonists, and they're two vastly different women, but they kind of go through the similar sort of things. But it's a book that deals with grief and depression and and coming out of that the other side. And when I picked this up, my cousin had just passed away really suddenly, and it was, sometimes I feel like you get books that you come across when you need to, and at the time I thought this book was something that kind of helped me work through some of the emotions that I was having at that point. And I thought it was thoroughly beautiful, and I've never seen anyone talk about it. But yeah, I would say, yeah, by the time I finished the book, it did make me cry, and thinking back on it, it kind of also makes me quite emotional as well. So yeah, I would say The Winter Garden by Alexander Bell. I would highly recommend it, but it is a very heavy and emotional book. A book that made me happy. Question 11. I would say Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, and you can see it on my shelf just there. It's also one of my favourite book covers of this year, but I thought it was fantastic. Again, like I said, I haven't been that big into cozy fantasy, but this is one I had heard a lot about and was like, okay, this sounds pretty cool. And again, it had a female protagonist that I just loved. I thought Emily Wilde was fantastic. She's stubborn, she's thoughtful, she's smart, she was so funny, and she has a dog companion as well. Well, kind of a dog companion, but you know. But yeah, it was such a nice book, and I can't wait for the sequel. I have pre-ordered the sequel already, so I can't wait for that to come out. But yeah, I would say the book that made me really happy, and I was really satisfied at the end of it as well, really satisfied. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing how that world progresses and how it sort of develops in the next book. Question 12, favourite book to film adaptation you saw this year? I haven't seen any. I'm not a massive, I used to be a massive film watcher, massive like Marvel, Lord of the Rings, all that sort of stuff. But recently, because in my opinion, there aren't really that many good films, I kind of always feel disappointed when I watch films at the moment, so I kind of haven't really watched any book to film films at the moment. But I have started watching Witcher season 3. I will hold my hands up and say I have not read The Witcher, much to my partner's dismay and his constant being like, you need to read this, you need to read this. I will get around to it eventually, but I haven't read it. But I've watched the first 2 episodes of the new season, and it's not bad. I like it, but then again, I love Henry Cavill, so make of that what you will. Question 13, favourite review you've written this year, or booktube version favourite video you've done for this year? I mean, I'm still relatively new to this, but yeah, I suppose my favourite one would be the book that wouldn't burn, only because that was my first video and it'll just always hold a special place. If you would like to watch that one, I'll link it down below as well. 14, most beautiful book you've bought so far this year. There's so many. There's so many. You can see 2 of them behind me here. So obviously Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies and The Art of Prophecy by Wesley Chu. That was fantastic. They're gorgeous covers. Up here I've got God Killer by Hannah Kaner. Also absolutely stunning cover. It's just so many. There is so many. I don't know what else I've had this year. Book That Wouldn't Burn, that's also a really cool cover. There's just so many. And last but not least, what books do you need to read before the end of the year? Again, that's a long list. That's an incredibly long list. I have a whole shelf over there that is full of books that I need to read. But a couple that I would like to get through would be Babel by R.F. Kuang. I've read The Poppy Walk, the only first one in the series. Again, the other 2 in that series I need to read, but Babel I would really like to get to because I've heard really, really good things about it, and it's been on my shelf for about a year now, so I need to read it. Another one is My Name is Morgan, which is a retelling of Morgan or Morgana from the King Arthur story. So it kind of it's almost like an origin story, how she became to be a rival to Merlin, and how she just became this infamous name within Arthurian legend. So that's quite an interesting one that I'm looking forward to reading. And also, what else? There is this. I've bought so many books recently. I don't know where to start. But yeah, there would be two of ones which I'd like to read before the end of the year. No, my luck, there's a lot of other books that are coming out, and they'll just get pushed down the list. But yeah, so that is my mid-year freak out. Okay, so that's it for my mid-year freakout. If you stuck around this long, thank you very much. If you would like to hear more from me and my thoughts on different books and things like that, then hit the subscribe button. And if you never want to miss anything, make sure you hit that little bell symbol so you always get notified when I've posted a video. Also, check out my Instagram page. That's more up to date than when I do my videos every week. But yeah, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you all soon. Bye.